And this next fight, we got a fight at women's strawweight. Fight I'm not too interested in personally, but Kanako Murata, she's making a return to MMA after over 2 years away from competition. The last time we saw her was June of 2021, where she got her arm broken by Virna Jandiroba, lost that fight. And I'm not sure the reason for the layoff being this long, but hopefully she comes back sharp, looks good. She actually trains with and cornered recently a fellow Japanese fighter that came back, Mizuki Inoue, and Mizuki was able to beat Hannah Goldie. So Murata's looking to join her and kind of show that Japanese way, maybe coming back to the UFC. And Vanessa Demopoulos, she has been an overachiever in my opinion. She came into the UFC late, started MMA late in general, and she had a 3-fight UFC win streak before her last fight. She got that fight snapped. She had a big fight with former title challenger, a fan favorite, and Karolina Kowalkiewicz, and pretty much got dominated for 15 minutes. But in general, that was a bad week for Demopoulos. She missed weight for that fight too, so it's going to be interesting to see how she looks in this one. She is 35 years old, and she can't afford 2 losses in a row, especially if she struggles on the scales again for this fight. So it's a pretty pivotal fight for her, and she's the underdog, but it's kind of a familiar position for her. She's been the underdog in almost all her fights in the UFC, if not all of them, and has been able to get the win in a few of them. So we're going to see. It is a decent matchup for her on paper because it is going to be a fight where she's going to get the type of fight she wants, right? I mean, you look at Kanako Murata, she's a former high-level wrestler. She wrestled on the national team in her country and performed well at the world level. And in MMA, she's a beast wrestler. I mean, her wrestling is extremely impressive. And even on the feet, I feel like she's improving, but her striking is kind of... Her and Demopoulos, if they strike, it'll be 50-50, kind of a low-level kind of trash striking fight. But it's going to be a grappling match because Murata, she's going to wrestle, and Demopoulos does not defend takedowns. She just flops to her back, and that's going to be the battle there. I mean, Murata, we've seen in fights, she's struggled with active guards. Like Emily Ducote gave her a lot of issues. She was throwing up a lot of submission attempts and ended up being a competitive fight because Murata had a lot of top control, but she had to defend a lot of arm bars, and she eventually won that fight. But it was a competitive one, and Demopoulos could potentially pose similar issues to that. And then we saw Virna Jandiroba, who was a higher level grappler, end up, not submitting Murata, but breaking her arm or hurting her arm significantly and ending the fight through a submission attempt. So one thing about Murata, she's not going to be a part of the quick tap club. I mean, like I said, we just saw her last fight. She let her arm get messed up before tapping out, and she's had other fights where she had really close calls and evaded the submission. So Demopoulos is going to have to find that moment and submit her off her back, I think, if she gets the win. But I think it's going to be a battle of that. If Murata can avoid getting submitted over 15 minutes, keeps that top position, can pass the guard and maybe do some damage or get into crucifix or get into a dominant spot and rain some ground and pound, then she's probably going to get the job done pretty easy. But if Demopoulos can keep it inside of her guard and keep throwing up submissions and making Murata work, maybe she could even win off her back or eventually find that submission. But for me personally, I never like betting on a girl that's path to victory, or a guy, or any fighter in general, really, that their path to victory is something, a guard sub from bottom. I just don't think that's usually a high likely avenue, especially at the UFC level. So going to go with Murata in this one to get the job done via decision. But I think it could be, a fairly competitive, interesting fight, especially if Murata is worried about the guard of Demopoulos and decides to strike, then it could really go either way. But I think Murata is going to get the win here.